the complexity of the radiation effects of the greenhouse gases is further confused by convection currents, which carry warm air at the surface to higher altitudes.
If you put greenhouse gases near the surface and the air currents short-circuit that greenhouse gas, it won't contribute to warming. If you put a lot in at the surface and take a little away near the top where the heat is deposited by the convection, that could lead to cooling even though you had a net increase in the amount of greenhouse gas. There is no simple, uniform relation between the total amount of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere and the temperature at the surface.
At the very least, we simply don't understand enough about the behavior of the atmosphere to predict the effect of a change in CO2 with any certainty. Even the final pillar supporting the greenhouse effect, the underlying physics, turns out to be as insubstantial as the rest. Although there is no evidence that increases in carbon dioxide are bad for us, it's still easy to think of it as a pollutant. But carbon dioxide is the equivalent of oxygen for plants, the essential life-giving gas. And it may well be that increases in carbon dioxide levels could turn out to be a good thing.
The vegetation of this planet developed and acquired its basic characteristics in an atmosphere that had much more CO2 than that of the present. And logic would therefore tell you that if you have more CO2 in the air, plants will do better. And in fact, this is exactly true.
For the past 3 years, Dr. Rizzo has been growing sour orange trees in enclosures containing double the amount of CO2 than normal. The carbon dioxide-enriched air is continuously pumped into the chambers and escapes up through the top. At the same time, identical trees are kept in exactly the same conditions, but are fed normal air only.
These trees are planted directly into the ground. This chamber here is getting twice the normal amount of carbon dioxide as what is in the atmosphere. You see the trees are growing quite well. They're taller than we are. Over here is a companion chamber that is receiving only ambient or normal air. And the trees here are only half as big as the trees in the enriched chamber. The enriched trees have 180% more volume in their trunks and branches than do the trees in the normal CO2 chamber. I think the interesting question is, how much could we possibly put into the atmosphere, let's say if we burned all of the fossil fuels that exist in the crust of the Earth? It's been estimated that the most we could increase it is about 10 times the present level. And from all of the studies that have been done, 10 times the present level would have no deleterious effects upon animal life, and it would be still beneficial to plants. It's very likely that we are going to need the added benefit of atmospheric CO2 enrichment to feed the generations that are going to come after us.
If there's concrete evidence of the benefits of CO2, and the detrimental effects are, at the very least, questionable, how is it that we've been led to take talk of catastrophe seriously? After all, it's only some 15 years since a rather different global climate catastrophe was in vogue.
There's the ever-present threat of a big freeze. Will a new ice age claim our lands and bury our northern cities? It's buried Manhattan Island before, when great glaciers half a mile thick filled the valley of New York's Hudson River.
You do accept that sort of 10, 15 years ago, people were talking about a global cooling, not a global warming.
Yeah. People were talking about global cooling 15 years ago, but not everybody. I was one who was not sure.
You say you didn't believe in global cooling, but in your first book you said, I've cited many examples of recent climatic variability and repeated the warnings of several well-known climatologists that a cooling trend has set in, perhaps one akin to the Little Ice Age. Mm-hmm. Well, that was just 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So
I said that because at the time it was true. But you got to be honest. You got to tell things the way they are. I don't mind people quoting what I had to say in the 70s.
But doesn't all of that add up to saying that you're asking governments to spend billions of dollars on a view which is different from one you held a decade ago?
I don't see any problem in saying that people learn. I'm not embarrassed about the view I had a decade ago.
You should remember that when I was going to graduate school, it was gospel that the Ice Age was about to start. And to tell the truth, I had trouble warming up to that one, too. So this is not the first. It is certainly the loudest of the climate apocalypses, but it is not the first.
There may be many reasons why we might want to believe in an apocalypse, but for the scientists involved, some of them are very straightforward.
It's easier to get funding if you can show some evidence for impending climate disasters. In the late 1970s, of course, it was the coming ice age, and now it's the coming global warming. Who knows what it'll be 10 years from now. But sure, science benefits from some scary scenarios.
A lot of people are getting very famous and very well known and very well funded as a result of promoting the disastrous scenario of greenhouse warming.
My suspicion would be that if one has a crisis like this, it's easier to gain funds for the profession as a whole.
I don't think funding directly influences the nature of the research or the approach.
But indirectly?
Well, I can use my own organization as an example. You're asking me a very difficult question here. Okay, my organization has only one permanent university-funded scientist, and that's me. I have about a dozen research workers with PhDs who are working in the climatic research unit, and they're all funded on so-called soft money. Their existence requires me, or us jointly, to get external support.
Funding may have encouraged belief in the greenhouse theory,